Internal considering. Among the many things that we have to observe in ourselves and work upon, according to this teaching, is the psychological state called internal considering. This refers to a process which takes a great deal of force from us, and like everything that takes energy from us in a pointless manner, it keeps us asleep. Internal considering is a branch of identifying, where the study of identifying and all of its different manifestations is one of the most important forms of practical work on oneself. An individual who identifies with everything is unable to remember themselves. In order to remember oneself, it is necessary not to identify. But in order to learn not to identify, a person must first of all learn not to be identified with themselves. One form of identifying is internal considering, of which there are several kinds, some of which are forms of identifying with oneself. One of the most frequent forms of internal considering is thinking about what others think of us, how they treat us, and what attitude they show toward us. A person may feel they are not valued enough, and this torments them, making them suspect others and causes an immense loss of energy for themselves. It can even develop in them a distrustful and hostile attitude toward others. Closely connected with this is that form of identifying called making accounts. A person begins to feel that people owe them, they surround themselves with an air of entitlement, feeling they deserve better treatment, more rewards, more recognition, better ranking, and this is all notated in some psychological ledger of accounts, the pages of which are continually turning over in their mind. Such an individual begins to pity themselves so much that it may be almost impossible to talk to them about anything, without making the unfortunate victim immediately refer to all of their sufferings. All accounts of this kind, all feelings that we are owed by other people, that we owe nothing ourselves, are of great psychological consequence to the inner development of a person. An individual in the work can only grow through the forgiveness of others. That is, unless we cancel our debts, nothing in us can grow. It is said in the Lord's Prayer, "Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors." Feeling that we are owed, feeling debts, stops everything. We hold ourselves back, and also hold back the other person. This is the inner meaning of Christ's remark, that one should make peace with one's enemy. He says, "Agree with thine adversary quickly, whilst thou art with him in the way, lest haply the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and thou be cast into prison. Verily, I say unto thee, thou shalt not come out until thou hast paid the last farthing." Matthew, chapter 5, verses 25 and 26. If we are going to exact every pound of flesh or every farthing from someone that owes us, psychologically, if we are going to make everyone apologize, make amends and eat the dust, then we will be under the exacting law that Christ warns us to escape from. We will put ourselves in prison, under unnecessary laws, and will not get out until we have paid on our side for all of our own faults. There is, however, a law of mercy, an influence higher than the literal law of an eye for an eye, which is the law of the one of violence, and this is a practical example of putting yourself under new influences. If we want to put ourselves under better influences, coming down the ray of creation, then we must behave differently, take everything differently, in other words, work for it. We must put ourselves primarily under the influences of this work, then try to obey, which means that we must hear, and then do the actual work. In the work, negative emotions, internal considering, making accounts, feeling violent, jealous, etc. are not encouraged. Hence, if we make inner accounts, then we always feel that someone owes us. Try to think what this means, and then observe what it means in yourself, then try to do what the work says, which is to separate. Do not imagine, however, this is a simple undertaking. The work means work, hard and uncomfortable work on ourselves. Remember, this work is for those who really wish to work and change themselves. It is not for those who wish to change the world and find answers to greenhouse gases or the brotherhood of man and world peace. We come here to a fuller description of one form of internal considering, but need to understand that we must observe this form within ourselves. No one can work on themselves without observing what this work tells them to observe internally, then seeing what it is that they have to work upon. We must be able to perceive our inner state at any particular time, as distinct from and entirely different from our outer physical body, along with whatever it is that it is doing. Once people can distinguish between their physical appearance and their inner states, the self and not self, they can then begin to work. To see that we all have a body which obeys orders, and then a psychology. This work is about what a person is psychologically. Let's reflect then upon that aspect of a person called in the work, singing your heart song. This is again psychological, and not literally singing. It is based on internal considering, making inner accounts, and feeling what we are owed, then recording it in memory. Everyone has a song or inner dialogue to sing about in this regard. If we really want to know what kinds of inner accounts that we have made throughout our lives, begin to notice the typical songs that you sing. When a person in the work is called a good singer, this refers to the songs that he or she has to share. Sometimes people sing their songs without any encouragement, and sometimes after a few glasses of wine, they begin to sing openly. They sing about how badly they have been treated, about how they never had a real chance, about their past glories, about how no one understood their difficulties, about how they married wrongly, about how their parents did not understand them, about how nice they really are, about how they have been unappreciated, misunderstood, and so on. All this means how everyone is to blame except themselves. All this is making inner accounts, or rather it is the result of making accounts, and is but one form of internal considering. Why do you think it is necessary in the work to get rid of these songs, as far as is humanly possible? Why is it necessary to notice them, to starve and not sustain them, to push them away, out of a central position in one's life, until they are sung only on rare occasions, in faint voice, and perhaps, finally, never again? Because they cripple us inside, and are utterly irrelevant. They take energy. We smile, bravely, everyone has that brave little smile, but it is all lies. A good singer in the work cannot get beyond themselves. They are a victim of their own account-making. As soon as anything is difficult they begin singing. This stops them dead, and they cannot grow. They may even begin to weep in self-pity. They cannot change their level of being. They cannot get beyond what they are, which is crippled by sad country songs lamented by some campfire. It is a sign of being. Being is what we are, and to change being one must not be what one is. Instead of working on themselves in some difficult situation, they begin to sing at once, perhaps very nicely and quietly. If they are criticized or spoken to sharply, they begin to pity themselves, or get furious and resentful, they feel they are not understood, and pout. Then they begin to sing, either softly to themselves or to others, particularly to anyone who will listen to them, which is the point of public bars and reflection from others. It is enabling, and even codependent. Often an individual makes friends with another person only because it is easy to sing his or her song to them, and if the latter suddenly tells them in so many words to shut up, they are so deeply offended that they go in search of a new friend, someone who will really understand them, as the expression goes, as if anyone could understand another person, after such brief acquaintance. If only, they say, with a deep sigh. To understand another, we must first understand ourselves, and this only begins after long work on oneself, after catching glimpses of what one is really like. A good singer certainly does not understand themselves, but prefers to sing the song that they are misunderstood, and so they dream of some marvelous world in which everything is so perfectly arranged, so they are the central figure on its stage. This attitude, and these dreams create a weakness, and in fact a real psychological impediment, for which one pays all through life. They have, as it were, let life overcome them. One must realize that this does not apply simply to people who make no effort, to people who are maladjusted. It also applies to people who make ordinary efforts, and yet are debilitated in this sense because they feel life owes them things that they have never attained. They feel they should be happier, and often believe that other people seem to be happier. Yet other people think the same of them, and although they do not sing their songs openly, perhaps songs go on in them secretly. They feel an inner sadness, a sense of monotony, boredom, a kind of inner tiredness or frustration, around which thoughts gather. They post on social media about soulmates and marriage, spend hours and even days searching for that ideal partner. It is these inner secret songs that we can explore further. For they also stand in one's way, and are often unobserved, though they are secretly eating away at our lives. Only deeper self-observation will reveal them. All self-observation is to let light in, to oneself. Nothing can change in us, unless it is brought into the light of self-observation, into the light of conscious awareness, and all self-observation is to make us more conscious of what is going on inside of us. We know that we must observe ourselves when we are alone, just as when we are with people or in company. Self-observation is inner attention. It is obvious that when we are alone there is just as much need for inner attention. When we are alone, quite different eyes, different forms of imagination, different thoughts, different moods, come forward from the shadows. One must not think that we are necessarily in good company when alone. We might easily be in the worst company, and yet not even think of observing where we are in ourselves, and what company we keep in ourselves. What are we reflecting? Our most negative and most dangerous eyes may come forward when we are alone. We may have well-written songs that only emerge when we are in solitude, when we feel that no one is looking. We must always observe, and never feel that no one is looking, simply because the front door is shut. We must never feel that we can indulge ourselves, in our worst negative eyes, just because we are alone, and therefore can behave as we like within ourselves. We must cultivate quite a new idea of accountability in this regard. To think we can go to sleep in ourselves, just because there is no one there, and can enjoy all our inner negative talking for that reason, is to have no proper concept of what this work means. It means that we lack inner sincerity, and this work demands inner sincerity as the first thing that is essential. In life we keep up outer appearances, but in the work the case is quite different. It is about what goes on inside of us, inside ourselves, in our deepest thoughts and feelings. By inner work on ourselves when we are alone, we can often change our whole outer situation. However, we cannot do that without inner sincerity, and observing which eyes in us are lying or twisting things around, and so on. We might formulate some aim not to be negative with a person, yet when we are alone we let our negative eyes say what they please, and make no effort not to identify with them, then we cannot work sincerely, and will undo a week of good work in a few moments. If we do not go with negative eyes in public, but indulge them in private, what do we think we are doing? We certainly have not begun to understand what work really means. We must handle a person we are working with, as carefully and as consciously in our inner thoughts and feelings, as we do externally from polite manners and social accountability. If we cannot see what this means, then we do not grasp what self-observation really implies. When sitting one afternoon with P.D. Ouspensky, remaining silent, he looked up at one of his students with a smile, then asked why they appeared to be so sad. They did not realize that they were. He responded, "It is a habit. You are listening to some eyes that are singing some sad faraway song, perhaps a song without words, or words you have forgotten. Try to observe this. It takes force from you, and is quite useless." Then he added, "This is an example of the moon eating you." This is an example of what is called in this commentary, inner secret songs. We know that the work sometimes speaks of sacrifice, that we must sacrifice something in order to get anything. What does the work say that we must sacrifice in the initial stages? It says we must sacrifice first and foremost our suffering. We express our suffering often in songs, articulate and inarticulate. What is called to our attention here are these inner inarticulate songs, that we should try to observe, and which can make us easily lose force, without our knowing what is taking place. They are, as it were, strange little sad private relationships that we have with ourselves, which steal force from us, and that we do not notice, simply because they are habits. In Tibet they are referred to as tulpa, which is an entity, created in mind, acting independently but parallel to our own consciousness. They are able to think, have their own free will, emotions and memories. A tulpa is believed to be a sentient being, living within our walled garden, but separate from us. Connected through heightened emotions. The shadow realm, or dwellers in darkness, which are our secret eyes.